All right, and so we are back again. Is the Game On podcast with yours truly, Joseph Faulkner, Eddie Ekwo, Festus Chuku, and Femi. We bring you this every week, but apologies first of all for not coming your way last week. It was due to all kinds of difficulties we faced last week. But here we're here and we're ready to go. Arsenal are welcoming Manchester City to the Emirates Stadium this week, and that's the headlining game of the weekend. Later on the show, we're going to be talking about that. But first of all, let me welcome the rest of the crew to the show today. Eddie, hope you've had a good week.
I've had a good week.
I deliberately asked that because Arsenal lost to learn. So I'm asking again. Hope you've had a good week.
Listen, I've had an interesting week. I am ready to go. Very, very big game this weekend, right? It doesn't come any bigger, and we're going to talk about that. So you guys need to stick for that and listen to us talk about the previews and to the games. And also in the NFL, there's also some big game going on. There's Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers. This is two big heavyweights. So welcome to the show, guys. And I'm so excited to talk football.
Awesome. Also, it's not just Eddie and I today. We've got Festus also joining us all the way from the United States. For our first piece of business today, Eddie, we're going to start from the UEFA Champions League. It's interesting how the English sides in the Champions League are shaping up, the kind of results they are coming. But Newcastle United, 4-1 win over PSG. So many people didn't see that coming, even though my radio show, I called a Newcastle win in the game, but I didn't see a 4-1 routing of PSG. Can the Magpies start dreaming, or they were just up against a really, really terrible PSG side?
No. So listen, they can start dreaming, but I would want to listen. Let's bask in the occasion. We're talking about a team that has been out of the Champions League for so long. Champions League coming back to the St. James Park. I mean, the last time they had Champions League football, the likes of Obafemi, were still playing in Newcastle back then. The likes of, Owen and Shearer, we're still playing football. These players have long retired, have started new careers, probably started, loss of families and everything. To have Champions League back at St. James Park, it was absolutely incredible for the fans. If you think about the anticipation for that game, Newcastle, there was no way PSG were going to come out of that game unscared, because St. James Park is already a very difficult stadium for most people that know it. And for PSG, they would have been shocked to see the sort of fan, the noise, the excitement, the anticipation. I'm not sure they've encountered anything like the Jordans, in all the time that they've been going to stadiums, going to different clubs. So that was always going to be a shock for them. And they probably underestimated how much of the energy within an NFL, within the English Premiership stadiums can actually do to the players themselves. Now, this is why we talk about, stadium being very difficult. We talk about Anfield being very difficult, the stadium. Sometimes it's not even because of the players, it's because of the atmosphere that can be generated. And St. James's Park was loud, on that day. And I think PSG kind of got in there and thought, you know what, we're just going to do what we're going to do. But Newcastle rose to the occasion. And I am so happy for all the Geordie fans. I have a friend who goes to all the Newcastle games, home and away. And she got into work and her voice was completely gone because she was screaming and screaming and screaming. She was actually live, at the game at St. James's Park. And she said that it was something that she never experienced in a long time. PSG at St. James's Park, Mbappe, all the big hitters, there. And then Newcastle, everyone is thinking, well, PSG is going to walk them all through, this game. But Newcastle brought their fans, brought everything, the hurt of being out of the Champions League for so long. They took that to the pitch and PSG were not ready for it. So can they start to dream? Absolutely, because at St. James's Park, I think they're going to be a match for anybody going to St. James's Park. It might be a different thing when they go and play away, but we all know the Champions League, you win your home games and you still points away from home, and that allows you to get to the next round. So I think Newcastle have put themselves in a very, very good shape, especially in that group, which we all, say that is the group of death, right now in the Champions League. So if they come out there top or number two, I think it really doesn't matter. It's about getting out of the group, getting to the next, round of qualification. And then when you get there, anything can happen, right? It's sometimes you get the luck of the draw. You get different teams shaped up along your path. And before you know what's happening, you're in the quarterfinals. So, I mean, look at Spurs. The very first time they got into the Champions League, they went very far because they were on unknown quantity. Their fans really propelled them, to go far in the competition. And I think the Geordie fans have the potential to help Newcastle go far in this competition. So yes, they should dream, but also, listen, we cannot ignore the occasion of what just happened at St. James's Park.
So I absolutely agree with you on that. And I'm going to take it, throw it to you as well, Festus. Newcastle, the way they were set out from this blast of the whistle, they looked like they meant business. The way they were picking the PSG midfield apart, and then the pace of Almiron, and then Bruno Gomes, all of them with his long range passing. You knew they were up to something very, very brilliant. But then, can you see them coming tops in that group, especially on the back of the fact that they went to AC Milan, picked a result, they picked a draw. Now at home to PSG, it was supposed to be closer than that, but then they won very convincingly. Do you see them topping that group?
Of course, anything is possible in that group. Currently, they are currently topping the group, and going to AC Milan to get a draw, and with the way they beat PSG, it's very possible for them to top that group because they've started well, and it's always good to start well. But the basic thing for them, I believe, whatever will be in their mind is to qualify, not even top the group. Once they can get out of the group stage, I think that's enough. That's a good achievement for them, coming back to the Champions League after 20 years or thereabout. So for me, qualifying from that group and going to the knockout stage, where we know anything can happen at that stage, it depends on how good you are on the day and how ready you are for a particular match. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it's very possible for them to top the group. They get one more win away and get good results at home. Yeah, very, very possible for them to top the group.
Yeah, big kudos to Eddie Howe and how we have set up that man. With the way they've started the season even in the Premier League, I think they can dream of going as far as possible in the Champions League. But if you are going to look at Newcastle United, Eddie, and what exactly is going on there, what exactly has Eddie Howe done to that team to make them this? They look like a solid unit going forward, defending. Lascelles, who's not been playing, came into the side, and it looked like somebody who's been playing every minute of the season. What exactly, has Eddie Howe done to this team?
They always talk about coaches and their identity, and when you're a coach and you're managing a big team, because we do. Newcastle is a big team. I know that it's not necessarily been the case in the last couple of years, but they're a huge team when it comes to history, in the Premier League. And what Eddie Howe has been able to do, he's been able to impress his identity on that squad. He talked about something in one of his press conferences. He said, "Listen, people will forgive you about your skill, but it's how you apply yourself on the pitch." And you have to give, 110%. You have to give work ethic. I think what he's been able to inscribe into those players is work ethic. If you look at the way that the Newcastle players, play, everybody is running at 100%. Everyone is fully committed. There is nobody on the pitch that you can say is the passenger. And that's usually very difficult, especially when you have players that are not playing regularly. You know, what he's been able to do for Isak and Callum Wilson, that every time any of them is on the pitch, they are productive. Especially when you would think about, you know, players, especially strikers with their egos. When one person is not playing, you expect that the other person, even if he comes in for a couple of minutes, you know, he might not necessarily turn on the style. But he's been able to get both Isak and Callum Wilson humming. And I think that, you know, being able to identify that, hey, we're not going to have the biggest stars, you know, in our team. But what we are going to do is we're going to give you a game every single time we step on that pitch. And when you play in front of the Geordie fans, that is what they are looking for. You know, they're looking for application. They're looking for hard work. They're looking for togetherness. They want you to give it their all because they all give it their all as fans, as Geordie fans on the pitch. So I think Eddie Howe has discovered his identity as a coach, and also imprinted that identity on those players. So now it doesn't matter who he plugs into the system, they have to play according to that identity. And so that makes them a very, very effective unit. So they're going to cause a lot of problems, you know, for teams this season. Now, the thing that everyone has always been saying is that can they always sustain the course, right? They always seem to taper off somewhere after midway of the season, right? Because it's very difficult to sustain that level of.
Did you say they always? They didn't last season.
No, last season, remember they had that period when they were playing those cup games.
They didn't taper.
Where they went through a couple of.
That's why they're in the Champions League. They didn't taper off.
No, but they did now. They
2 seasons ago, yes.
They had draws last season.
Tapering off is different from having a bad patch.
I'm not talking about them losing games. I'm talking about the way that they were dominating teams at the start of the season. They didn't sustain that throughout the season.
But you'd expect a team to have, even Arsene Wenger, I don't think can repeat that unbeaten run again. You know, so you'd expect teams to have periods where they're going to draw games, lose one or two games around there.
Does that?
You know?
City has
you know, but you can't call that tapering off.
There is no way in a whole marathon, a whole period of the league, you won't have that period where, you know, everything goes through that.
But one of the good things they did last season was they kept the momentum. That's why they were able to finish in the Champions League. Unlike 2 seasons ago, when, you know, they were there and they really had a bad patch. You know, but last season, I think it was normal. At some point, they were going to draw games. They were going to drop points. Everybody, you know, unlike Arsenal that dropped it at a very painful period in the season when they started picking up draws here and there. But then, again, I will say kudos to Eddie Howe. If you look at him from when he was at Bournemouth, with little or no resources available to him, he was able to put together a unit that played football that troubled a lot of the big teams, even though eventually they got relegated. But, you know, you knew that relegation was always coming because they weren't investing in the team. But with the little he had, you could see the way he set up his team. And one of the things he did when he took over Newcastle United, he stopped the way they conceded goals. One of the things is, first of all, made them steady at the back. And then his emphasis is on, like every modern coaches, especially the ones from Spain, the emphasis is on midfield play, that robust midfield play. You've got guys in midfield who can give you beautiful football at the same time, as well as grit, and their midfield is always intense, you know, and they deprive you time and space of the ball, and that's why they're always a problem for the big teams whenever they meet the big teams. Every time they meet a ball playing side, they enjoy themselves because they can push the ball around and they can also go direct, and that's one beautiful thing. Look at the goal Almiron scored, the first goal. 2 passes, the ball was in the box for Almiron, you know, and he took his chance very well. So kudos to them.